let's talk about the independent uses of subjunctive. These are stand-alone sentences that show something that, could happen or should happen or may happen or, have the potential to happen. They can also be wishes, wants, questions, so something that you're deliberating between, so should I go left or right? And then also just common things that, should happen, let it happen, let the gods be forever in your favor. All of those things fall into the category of independent uses of subjunctive. So unlike the dependent uses of subjunctive, again, these are standalone sentences. These subjunctives occur without much prompting, and sometimes it can be hard to tell the difference between all of these uses. So again, I have a flowchart for you. You start at the top and go down. The first type of subjunctive that you're going to check for is an optative. These are wishes. Typically, the first word in the sentence is going to be an utinam. This is not always the case, but I would say 9 times out of 10, you're going to have an utinam with an optative. If you have an utinam, it automatically is an optative. And in general, I gave you a third column to say the best translation. Typically, it's hard to translate these subjunctives, so I gave you these helpful hints. I would go ahead and use them because I find them to be the easiest way to translate them. So, for example, you could say, oh, that it were Saturday. Another way to say that is, I wish it were Saturday, and that would make just as much sense. But in Latin, to really capture the utinam, I find, oh, that helps people really kind of connect with the original language. So, oh, that it were Saturday would be an optative. And again, you might have a sentence without the utinam, and it could just be, I wish that it were Saturday. That would also be fine, and you could have that sentence, and it would still be an octative. Your next thing you're going to check for is a deliberative. A deliberative shows exactly what it sounds like you're deliberating between choices. So, should I go left or right? So these are going to have question words. Should I go left or right? Something along those lines that allow you to ask a question. It's going to typically have a question mark at the end too, so that's a pretty good indicator as well. Again, they don't always have to, but it's fairly consistent. What am I going to do? That's also a deliberative. All of those things are, rhetorical questions that necessarily can't be answered at that point and are going to be deliberatives. For the best translation, just use the question word they give you. So if they give you quid to say, what am I to do? Use quid as what and say, what am I to do? It seems pretty self-explanatory from that regard, but if you have any questions, let me know. And these last two are the hardest to tell the difference between, and I usually don't fault people from getting them confused. But let's start with the potential, because I think the potential is a little easier to see as a real possibility. So a potential subjunctive shows something that could happen. There are no real indicators for these last two, which makes it really hard because you actually have to translate the entire sentence to know the difference between these two. So, real indicators don't exist. However, it shows something that could happen. It could rain tomorrow. It may rain tomorrow. That example would be a potential, something that could happen. For a potential subjunctive, you can use the words may or might. If you have a present subjunctive, you go ahead and use may. If you don't, you use might. Might is a past tense form of the word may, in case you didn't know that. And then hortatory gestives are not quite commands, but suggestions. Let it rain tomorrow. It doesn't quite show that you're commanding it to rain, because who would you command? Possibly Jupiter, but it really doesn't show an exact command as much as it shows, a slight suggestion. Let it rain tomorrow. It's not quite a wish, oh, that it would rain tomorrow, because you're not wanting it to happen, but let it rain tomorrow. So typically, if you can't figure out if it's a potential or a hortatory jussive, the best way to be able to do that is to actually just translate it and try those words in. So it may rain tomorrow versus let it rain tomorrow. There are no indicators, so you just try them out and fill in the blanks with those two words. If to you it makes most sense to say it may rain tomorrow versus let it rain tomorrow. So if it makes most sense to say may, it's a potential subjunctive to you. If it makes more sense to say let, it's a potential a hortatory jussive to you. And I tend to have the most leniency with this just because it is really hard to tell. If you're faltering between the two, I would almost always guess hortatory jussive. They're way, way more common. I would say, 80% of the time it's a hortatory jussive, especially in real life Latin. Now let's talk about the difference between hortatory and jussive. Hortatory is only first person singular and plural, versus the jussive is a second person singular and plural for both of those. So if you say, let me go to the store, it would be hortatory, versus let Zeus make it rain, that would be a third person, so it would be a jussive. If you say hortatory jussive every single time, I am okay with that. If you say hortatory for the first persons and jussives for the second and third persons, I'm okay. But if you're going to say hortatory jussive, please be aware that there is a difference between the two. And don't say jussive for a first person, don't say hortatory for a second or third. I would just be safer to say hortatory jussive. Hopefully this helped you learn the difference between the independent uses of the subjunctive. Let me know if you have any questions, and keep in mind these are really, really loose categories. So if you can defend your answer, if you can say it's an optative because da 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 da, I'm probably not going to fault you. I might take off a couple points because I think an answer is more correct, but to be fair, this is really a subjective type of learning, and if you really feel that an answer is better if you justify it, I'm probably not going to fault you, at least not fully.